Look, while you were scrolling through your phone, checking stock prices, or arguing about the latest celebrity drama, something absolutely massive just happened in Brussels. And I mean massive. On October 16th, 2025, the European Commission and the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, unveiled a plan that's going to completely redraw the military map of Europe. We're talking about turning the European Union into a military megabloc capable of moving millions of soldiers to any point on the continent within days. This isn't science fiction, folks. This is happening right now. I spent years working inside one of the biggest, most recognized media organizations out there. I watched editors kill stories that didn't fit the narrative, saw producers spin facts until they were unrecognizable, and eventually I'd had enough. I walked away from that world because I believe you deserve the truth, not some sanitized version approved by executives who've never set foot outside their corner offices. Now I work for myself, answer to no one, and tell you what's really going on behind those carefully crafted headlines. And if what I'm about to share resonates with you, if you want to keep getting this kind of unfiltered analysis, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Better yet, consider becoming a sponsor. It's viewers like you, people who value independent voices, that make this work possible. Your support means I can keep digging, keep questioning, keep bringing you the stories the mainstream won't touch. So here's what's actually happening. The EU just dropped something called the Defense Readiness Roadmap to 2030. Behind that bureaucratic title lies the most ambitious military project in European Union history. They're building a centralized troop deployment system that will unite 27 countries into a single fighting machine. The price tag? Try 800 billion euros. That's not a typo. 800 billion euros to transform Europe into a military superpower. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part most outlets aren't telling you. Right now, today, European tanks literally cannot cross into neighboring countries. Why? Because they're too heavy for the bridges and roads. Think about that for a second. We're in 2025, and Europe's military infrastructure is so outdated that modern tanks would collapse the very bridges they're supposed to cross. In Germany alone, 4,500 out of 40,000 bridges are in such poor condition they can't support heavy military equipment. And it gets worse. Eastern European infrastructure, most of it built during the Soviet era, was designed for 45-ton T-72 tanks. But Western tanks like the Leopard 2 or Challenger 2, those beasts weigh 60 tons. The roads simply weren't built for them. The Suwalki Corridor, that critical strip of land between Poland and Lithuania, that's basically the gateway to the Baltic states. It's a logistical nightmare for rapid tank deployment because of the outdated road network. That's exactly why the EU is throwing 70 billion euros just at modernizing transportation infrastructure. Now let me tell you about something they're calling the Solidarity Pool, and this is where things get really interesting. This revolutionary mechanism is going to require all European Union member states to provide their transportation assets for their neighbors' military needs. Trucks, trains, ferries, aircraft, everything becomes common property when there's a threat. Some countries are even going to be forced to purchase new equipment specifically for this pool. Your country's trucks could be hauling another nation's soldiers tomorrow, and you'd have no say in it. And guess who's getting the starring role in all of this? Germany. Deutsche Bahn, that's the German national railway company, notorious for delays and service problems, is suddenly becoming the main operator of continental military logistics. The same company that can't get commuters to work on time is now responsible for moving tanks across Europe in a crisis. Lufthansa, the airline, will handle troop air transport. The German army has already signed agreements with major corporations, including Rheinmetall, to ensure NATO logistics. Let me paint you a picture of what they're building. 4 major European flagship readiness projects, each one sounding like something out of a military thriller. First, the European Counter-Drone Defense Initiative, a direct response to lessons from Ukraine, where cheap drones are turning multi-million-dollar tanks into scrap metal. Second, the Eastern Flank Watch, a surveillance and defense system along the borders with Russia and Belarus that's going to turn the Baltic states into an impenetrable fortress. Third, the European Sky Shield, an integrated air and missile defense system capable of intercepting everything from drones to ballistic missiles. And fourth, the European Space Shield, protection for EU satellites and space assets from growing threats in orbit. These aren't proposals anymore, they're in motion. But while Brussels is drawing up troop movement diagrams, the Baltic states are preparing for something much darker: mass civilian evacuation. According to official estimates, more than 1 million people will need to be relocated from just 3 small Baltic republics. Estonia is planning to evacuate 140,000 people. That's 1/10 of the country's entire population. 2/3 of Narva's residents, a city right on the Russian border, will have to leave their homes. Latvia is preparing to relocate 630,000 people. That's 1/3 of its total population. Lithuania has already conducted trial evacuations in Vilnius, but the real plans call for housing 300,000 refugees in the western city of Kaunas. Schools, universities, churches, even sports arenas already have supplies stockpiled, everything from toilet paper to camping mattresses. They're not playing around. Think about the financial firepower behind this project for a moment. 150 billion euros in loans through the new Security Action Program for Europe, that's safe. Another 70 billion for infrastructure, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Total investments could reach 800 billion euros by 2029. The European Investment Bank is becoming the primary lender to the military-industrial complex through the European Defence Industry Programme, EDIP, worth 1.5 billion euros. Their goal is bold. By 2030, 50% of all military procurement by EU countries should come from European defense industry. They're not just building an army, they're building an entire industrial ecosystem to support it. And you know what nobody's talking about? The speed factor. In modern conflict, speed determines who lives and who doesn't. NATO's response force can deploy in 5 to 20 days. But this new European High Readiness Brigade, they're aiming for 2 to 5 days. Why does that matter? Because Baltic military officials estimate that opposing forces could capture all 3 Baltic states in 3 to 7 days. We're talking about a window measured in hours, not weeks. For context, Article 5 of NATO, the Collective Defense Clause, has only been activated once in history, after the events of September 11th, 2001. But that was about Afghanistan, thousands of miles away. Today, conflict has come to Europe's doorstep, and the alliance is preparing for completely different challenges. Here's the irony that should make you laugh and cry at the same time. Deutsche Bahn, the company that can't ensure on-time arrivals for passenger trains, is now responsible for moving tanks in case of confrontation with a nuclear power. They've been given an exclusive role in ground military logistics despite chronic infrastructure problems. European experts are now assessing things like railway track straightness and bridge stability, factors that seem like technical details in peacetime but become matters of national security when conflict erupts. If you're still with me, and I hope you are because this affects all of us, do me a favor. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you think about Europe's transformation into a military fortress. Are they preparing for an inevitable conflict, or are they creating a self-fulfilling prophecy? And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. This channel exists because people like you want the truth, not sanitized corporate news. By 2028, the EU will have unified rules and procedures for rapid troop deployment across its territory. More than 500 hotspot projects requiring around 100 billion euros in investment have already been identified, mostly along the EU's eastern border. Troops will rely on a network of ground corridors, airports, seaports, and supporting elements ensuring seamless transportation throughout the Union. In a crisis, soldiers will use dual-purpose civilian infrastructure. Here's what this really means. The EU plan isn't just a military reform. It's a fundamental transformation of European society where civilian infrastructure becomes part of the war machine and private companies become links in the chain of collective defense. Your local airport, the highway you drive to work, the railway your kids take to school, all of it is being quietly integrated into a continent-wide military network. In November 2025, European officials will present an ambitious package of military mobility measures. This will be the moment of truth for a project that could transform the EU from an economic union into a military superpower capable of confronting any threat of the 21st century. Europe isn't the peace-loving Europe we used to know anymore. Today, it's arming itself to the teeth, preparing for a scenario that might already be standing at its door. And here's my question for you. When civilian life and military preparedness become indistinguishable, when your tax dollars are funding not just roads but tank corridors, when private companies are contractually obligated to serve military purposes, what kind of society are we building? Is this defensive preparation, or are we watching the militarization of an entire continent? The plan is already in motion. The money is being allocated. The infrastructure is being redesigned. And time will tell whether Europeans have the resolve to see this massive project through when the hour of testing arrives. Because make no mistake, this isn't about readiness for some hypothetical future conflict. Based on the scale, the urgency, and the specific geographic focus on the eastern flank, European leadership clearly believes something is coming, and they're racing against the clock that might already be running out. So let me recap what we've just covered, because this is a lot to process. The European Union is investing 800 billion euros to build a unified military deployment system by 2030. They're fixing 4,500 bridges in Germany alone and modernizing roads across Eastern Europe so modern tanks can actually move. They've created a solidarity pool, forcing member states to share transportation assets for military purposes. 4 flagship defense projects are being launched, from counter-drone systems to space shields. The Baltic states are planning to evacuate over 1 million civilians. Deutsche Bahn and Lufthansa are becoming key military logistics operators, and the entire civilian infrastructure of Europe is being transformed into dual-use military assets. This is the biggest military buildup in European history, happening right now, and most people have no idea it's even occurring. That's why channels like this exist. That's why your support matters. If this analysis opened your eyes to something you didn't know, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And if you really want to support independent journalism that doesn't bow to corporate interests or government narratives, consider becoming a channel sponsor. It's people like you, viewers who care about truth over convenience, that make this possible. The mainstream media won't tell you these stories because they're too busy protecting their access and their advertising revenue. I don't have those constraints, and that's exactly how I intend to keep it.